Hey
Hi,
kids,
yeah.
thanks for coming by again. It's Tori and Arnie for part 3. I'm going to interview them on the second part of the raid. So why don't you tell, it's kind of an amazing story, but why don't you tell them what happened?
An incident, well, the Scientologists had a plan. At least this is what I think their plan was. And I'm going to tell you the plan and then tell you what occurred.
Okay.
Their plan was to overwhelm me with the raid so I'd be in shock, and then place LSD and some other kind of drug somewhere in the house so that I'd be tripping my brains out for a couple of days maybe, because they had filed with this ex parte motion a motion for accelerated video deposition on Tuesday. It was Saturday of the raid, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, they wanted me here on their version of YouTube.
Which would have been what?
Which would have been a deposition video.
Okay.
But they wanted me to be a raving lunatic, having been up for a couple of days roaring on acid.
Wow. And this was what year again?
This is 95.
Oh, 95?
This is in 1995.
Okay.
What happened was, on that Saturday night, I didn't brush my teeth. I still have them, but I didn't brush them then. And on Sunday night, I did. But for some reason, I started using just a very little bit of toothpaste. And I brushed my teeth, and I got in bed. And I used to listen to these meditation tapes to decompress and go to sleep, because they just knock you out. And I put the headphones on, and I'm listening to the tapes, and I couldn't deal with listening to the tape. I ripped the headphones off in a panic, just the way they...
Wow.
These are tapes that normally it's like 10 minutes of this, and they're out cold. Anyway, but I couldn't listen to them. They were intolerable. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I thought, what's going on? What's going on? I was starting to panic. Well, I could understand being a little anxious about the events of the previous day and facing off against a multi-billion dollars cult in U.S. federal court and not even having your computer to call you guys and ask for help. And, however, while laying there, after pulling off the headphones, it was about 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I start seeing stuff moving around. And this wasn't like mushrooms where things wiggle. This was like things in the air moving around, glowing patterns.
Like hallucinations.
Hallucinations.
Wow.
And they were somewhat LSD-like, but there was a little difference to them, but there was something particular that I noticed, because for me, luckily in the 60s, I went to Woodstock, and I took LSD a few times back then, and I had a great time. But in the center of the palms of my hands, I recall a certain particular feeling.
Oh yeah, right.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
I also remember a particular feeling in another part of my body, which I won't mention.
Talk about it.
And
but you can imagine.
it was unmistakable, because I hadn't experienced this combination of the thing here and the thing there at the same time in decades.
Right.
But luckily I took LSD in the 60s, and that saved my life, because without that I would have thought I was going crazy.
Yeah, you would have thought you were nuts.
I thought I was going nuts. But there was something else in it that was very unpleasant, too. But I just took a little bit of it, all right?
Right.
But had I used the full thing, the full glob of toothpaste, because I just used this little tiny smidgen, you know?
Right.
Had I used a full glob of toothpaste, considering what the little smidgen did for me, I would have been up for days.
Right.
Now imagine what I would have looked like during that video interview after tripping my brains out in a state of paranoid schizophrenia, with whatever else was it mixed in with this mix to try to make me crazy, perhaps some extract of Jimson weed.
Right, or something.
Or something. I don't know. I mean, I know for sure it had LSD in it.
Right.
And I know there was something else, but I couldn't identify it.
Right.
And then I called the police. Well, I called a friend of mine who was a constitutional lawyer who'd come over earlier, explained what was happening, and he said, well, call the cops. So I called the Arlington County Police. The guys come over. I explained what's going on, and you have to understand I'm tripping a little bit, okay? I didn't make a really good convincing argument of this.
Right there. Alex is here. Alex.
Okay, we're almost done. We'll be there.
I didn't make a really good convincing argument of this, considering the condition I was in, and the police explained to me that they couldn't do any kind of tests unless they actually had somebody in custody, and that the test would cost $750, and they weren't willing to do it at the time.
Right.
And
They're on TV.
and we just had guests stop by,
Yes, some
pardon
guests
me,
just
right in the middle of
came
this.
by.
I guess we need our own production facility.
Yes.
But that was Scientology's plan. They wanted to get me all messed up on LSD and get me on a video deposition after tripping my brains out for 3 days, so I could discredit myself or be in a panic or settle with them and sign documents that I was a evil Markabian intruder from another dimension.
And they utterly failed at that.
And they utterly failed at that, because what they had not anticipated was that 2 weeks prior to posting this document, my friend Lawrence Wollersheim, who had a judgment against Scientology after a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional duress for $5 or $10 million.
Right. Which he won.
Which he ended up winning. But
despite them saying not one thin dime for Wollersheim, he won.
He ended up getting
million.
his money.
Right.
All right? He no longer fights Scientology very much anymore, and frankly, I don't blame him after everything he'd been through.
Right.
Anyhow, on the Monday after this incident, I ended up at the law firm Hogan and Hartson, and they made arrangements and talked to the lawyers. They asked Earl Cooley during the interviews, "Oh, Mr. Cooley, do you still want Mr. Lerma at this video deposition tomorrow?" And Earl Cooley says, "Oh, no, never mind, forget it. We'll reschedule it." All right? Because now I had Hogan and Hartson, and I wasn't all screwed up.
Right. And
they didn't know that Lawrence Wollersheim had asked me to be a director of FACTNet, FightAgainstCoerciveTactics.org.
And if you haven't gone there, check it out. It has tons of information.
And he had $1 million in liability director's indemnity, and $1 million of litigation insurance.
Right.
And the Scientologists were not pleased, because the 6-inch brief they had written was intended to bowl over some guy who would try to fight them pro se after getting on video deposition, tripping his brains out, and try and explain all of that to a judge.
Right.
And the great thing about this whole case is they tried to settle it 3 times. Each time the numbers got bigger. First it was just like 10,000 and it goes away, but we seal the case. Next time it was like maybe 50,000 chump change, and we seal the case. I mean, these guys sued me.
Right.
And they're asking to settle it and pay me.
Right.
As long as we seal the case. So
right.
that
and
you
nobody
guys,
can know.
Right, so nobody can know.
Right.
I mean, we ended up beating them on their trade secrets. Well, that's after they had added the Washington Post to the lawsuit for writing one of the articles. It's linked from here. And so we beat them on all their trade secret claims. And the judge, because of their conduct and because of the statutory nature of copyright law, sort of had her hands tied. She had to find me guilty of 5 counts, non-willful infringement.
Right.
Oh, and speaking of those 5 counts they found me guilty of, those 5 counts weren't even for the thing I posted that they used to get the raid, the Xena story. It was for some other rubbish that they found while searching my hard drive.
Okay.
Because they didn't even want to go near that issue.
Yeah, they never want to say Xenu even.
Yeah, Xenu, Xenu, the evil. The way the quote and the judge confirmed this whole thing as being true, which is the whole point of this, this litigation for me anyway, was so that it would be true and they'd never be able to say, well, we don't believe that.
Right.
And so we have U.S. Federal Judge Leona Brinkema. Thank you, Judge Brinkema. Good job. I mean, they tried to baffle you with so much bull, and you saw through most of it. But I think the quote goes, the Scientologists believe that humans are infested with the spirits of dead space aliens, which cause detrimental effects in their contemporary lives. And if you practice Scientology teachings, you can get rid of these little critters. Well, critters is my word. You can get rid of them. And this was a judicial ruling in U.S. federal court.
Mine is dead space aliens.
Dead space aliens, okay?
I like that too, but we got to go pretty soon.
All right. Anyway, so that's what the plan is, and they finally. Anyway, we could say some more later.
We're going to do another one. Listening. Come back for part 4. Now we're on.
Yeah, well, it'll go on for years.
I know. I got a bunch of them. Thank you for coming by. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you too.
Have a great weekend. Bye bye.